the April version of the Environmental Board of Oneonta's meeting. We'll do a roll call first. Commissioner Bischoff.
Here.
Commissioner Davey.
Here.
Commissioner Rothbard will not make it today. Commissioner Keel.
Present.
Commissioner Pollock.
Here.
Commissioner Bright.
Here.
And Councilmember Davies. So we'd also like to welcome our guests Stephen Yearley and Morgan, is it Whittington?
Yeah.
Excellent. Greg's gonna make it, yes?
Greg is making
Okay,
it.
all right, great.
So he's just running a touch late.
Greg Mattice will be here soon. First item of business is approval of the minutes from the February meeting, as March was canceled due to weather. Any comments or corrections on it?
Can we have just a moment?
Sure.
Thanks. Just one comment, if I might, under Common Council Communication.
Yes.
Councilmember Davies asked the board for help implementing the Climate Smart Community Pledge Program. I'm not sure that that's correct. We're not actually doing the implementing.
That might be phrased
That's,
inaccurate.
y'all
Sure.
get to do that, thank you.
It's been
but,
implemented, I guess, technically. What would be a better word there?
I would say coordinating.
Coordinating.
Yeah.
Coordinating. Correction. Go into the record, right?
And I believe Caitlin Davies mentioned your program, your efforts on the dashboard, or I need to look at my notes.
I don't know if there was enough to register, but there'll be more.
The 2030 dashboard, that was in my notes.
It's
If we could have that.
Sure.
It's a real thing, we're working on this, we should highlight.
I have the back end of it, I'll be meeting with.
And where?
It's fabulous.
and
In the same
Morgan
spot.
and Greg.
Or- No, not
Okay,
the same spot.
engagement.
Where was it? It was, I think it was energy, but we had a long discussion of climate smart.
Right.
But yeah, that's when Caitlin participated, I think, with that. So, either up there with, under Common Council Communication.
Okay. And how shall we put that in? Because somehow that did not get into my notes.
You could say that I reported progress on it, and that way it's old
Okay.
business, but
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be new business moving forward.
Just getting the, working on the 2030 dashboard for,
Under all business, you're saying?
to see where we're at,
See
to
where
to
we're at.
lack of better words, yeah.
I'm so excited to see where we're at.
Progress made on the 2030, report, whatever that's called, Mark. Only out to 2030, is that the name of it?
Yes.
Yeah. For progress on, only out to 2030.
And we're seeing
Is that the name?
tomorrow even.
Yay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Could I have a motion to approve the February minutes as amended?
So moved.
Yeah, second. I'll go with me.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Very good. Motion carried. Do we have any, well, we have petitioners, I guess, but they're on the agenda, so so no other petitioners to our knowledge. Any correspondence? Very good. Commissioner Davies.
Sure, I think the only thing to report that's of interest to this board came out of a discussion that was in the Quality of Life and Infrastructure Committee, and Kathy was there, so she can certainly contribute as well. And that was that the Deer Management Task Force, we had the folks from the DEC came to speak with the committee, and Deer Management Task Force folks were there, and kind of an interesting conversation about the next steps, and what it was agreed was that the DEC and the Deer Management Task Force would get together and have further conversations about, as I understood it, kind of looking at more of the plan and making sure that the proposed plan that has not been adopted yet by council, but that the proposed plan kind of addressed several different pieces. And some of those pieces were that kind of efforts were put into place and acted upon first prior to kind of getting to a culling, and so that there's going to be some clarity and discussion around that, and then the plan would be kind of further finalized and then presumably brought back to the Quality of Life and Infrastructure Committee and perhaps brought to the full council for a decision. Oh, Sandy, you were there too. My apologies. So that was my takeaway.
There was just a bit of miscommunication with the DEC. We did not know that they needed or had not gotten the full proposal.
Right.
We only sent them the part that was pertinent to the actual culling process. So her questions were about things that were in the proposal that she hadn't seen. She now has it, we're waiting to get her comments back.
Good.
And hope to meet with her and get it to you guys before your next meeting at the end of this month.
Okay, sounds good.
Yep. Yeah.
Chair. Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I have a question.
Sure.
So I raised this before, and the same question is the report available to the public?
Yes.
It is,
And
it's
how-
not on the city website, it's
It
on,
is,
on the city website?
right?
I don't believe it's on the city website, I believe it's on the All for Oneonta website.
All for Oneonta,
which
yes,
is
you're
on the city
right, that's
website.
true. It's on the All for Oneonta, correct.
So allforoneonta.com.
Oh, is not there a requirement for possibly public notice and comment on this proposed action at
This
all?
has not been, there's no action yet, this is,
Well, you're talking about finalizing a plan before the notice and comment. That's my concern.
No, meaning that the task force is finalizing a plan. That plan would need to be brought to council. At that particular time, it would be discussed. I think then it would be a public comment. I'm not sure how that would work, if it needs to be public comment or not, but I think it would probably kind of create a public comment opportunity. But at the committee level, or at even, it's not a committee level, it's a task force level right now. Task force recommendations, there is nothing actionable at this point. It is nothing more than recommendations from a group that has been put together to examine the problem and make recommendations. So there is nothing actionable at this time. There's only I would say, a draft of a plan that will be put forward to the Quality of Life and Infrastructure Committee. And then it'll be discussed there, and certainly those are public meetings and people can attend those.
But the fundamental document needs to be available, I would think, especially if it's a proposed plan. Once it becomes a proposed
The
plan,
documents that were provided to the Quality of Life Committee are available on the website under each individual meeting. They're part of their packets.
okay,
Yeah.
that's not really transparent for the public, or not as accessible as we might want to make it.
Yeah, I don't,
Maybe after the next iteration, but before.
yeah, I don't think we're yet to a point where decisions are being made. I think that there's still a clarifying of a proposal. One of the takeaways I took from the DC was that there needed to be kind of, the plan needed to involve several kind of steps moving forward, and I think the committee is clarifying some of that. I mean, let's just call it what it is. The DEC is the one that has to approve a culling permit. And so, until we have, as a municipality, have demonstrated that we have taken other steps prior to proposing or applying for a culling permit, it's a no-go. At least that was my takeaway, and that seemed pretty strong, is that they're just not gonna give you a culling permit. They want you to enact other steps prior to that time. So I think, what will happen is that the task force will finish their recommendations, and then they'll be brought back, and frankly, I think that's the point where there's gonna be quite a bit of public debate, public
Mhm.
discussion about
Yeah.
that.
As
Because-
there should be.
Yeah, no, and these are kind of recommendations coming from a task force that will then be entertained by a committee, and then perhaps entertained by council at some point.
The DEC did also come before this body prior to the Deer Management Committee and said that there's not really a scientific basis to say we have a deer problem, but said if the public feels we have a deer problem, we have a deer problem.
Well,
So then that says we need to make sure that the public is being fully represented in the discussion. in my opinion.
we've clarified that a little bit more though, to the point that it's not just opinion, it's how do you look at the effects of the deer, such as the damage to the undergrowth in the parks and on hillsides where sliding, landslides occurred, erosion,
And that can be proven. That's the walk I did with Donna Vogler. I
Right.
learned how to identify deer browse.
And that's why having the report that has the basis for the plan is so crucial.
Yeah, we have all that in there, all of it. Trust me, it's all in there. And we've done as much as we can to get information out. There have been articles in the paper, we've posted things on Facebooks, we've made a real effort to get the community informed to the extent that we can now. But there's nothing for anybody to vote on, so, as of yet, correct?
Right.
We're hoping to move it forward.
So yeah, I think your point, Gina, is well taken, is that once that the proposed plan is finalized, then we'll bring it forward, and I think we need to make ample opportunities for the public to come and weigh on that and take a look at it, so. But I would recommend that you check out I think it's
All throwing on them.
all four, and it's like number sign 4.
Or in your committee meeting folder, which is the public access point.
Both of them are public,
Okay.
but the public, if you go on to our website, you can go to meeting agendas, and there's an entire packet. Every document that we hand the council is in that packet.
Good, it is in our agenda, our website.
If I had it beforehand, it's in your packet.
Excellent, good, thank you. That's all I have for you.
Okay. Thank you, Councilmember Davies. Welcome, Greg Mattice. Hi. The discussion of the Community Climate Program is next on the agenda, so. Okay with that?
I mean, I'm not sure what exactly you're hoping to accomplish tonight, but I'm assuming it's just kind of where are we at, where do we go from here?
What kind of partnership are we imagining, what you would expect from us, just to iron out some of the technicalities of who's responsible for what, I guess.
Sure. So I think it was two years ago, Mark, if you remember, Steve, we,
I think it was longer than that.
Was it-
It was before COVID.
was it pre-COVID, 3
Yeah.
years ago?
It was pre-COVID.
This DEC Climate Smart Communities program has existed for quite a while, but about 3 years ago, we attempted to get ourselves organized and start working on this. Maybe it was COVID that kind of derailed it more than anything, but we established, the city council through a resolution established a Climate Smart Communities Task Force. And I think that consisted of myself, Stephen, Mark, Danny Lappin, and Kevin Schultz, that's right. So going forward, we might want to consider reconstituting that, or, replacing David Schultz, assuming he's not interested in being involved anymore, no longer being on the environmental board. And I'll hand it off to Stephen Morgan. Mrs. Morgan, she's an intern working for the city. She's a SUNY student, and she's really interested in this and has been starting to look at what we have done, start gathering some documentation on different actions that we may have already accomplished or could accomplish through some simple steps. So she's been working with Stephen on that primarily, and started to reach out to some department heads. And maybe you guys can talk a little bit about what you've looked at, what you've found so far.
So what we have looked at is, the city has the ability to accomplish some of the items on the list of actions fairly easily. Some of it is literally just organizing what we already have and figuring out what we need. So Morgan and I kind of started going through the action items kind of one by one, and identifying actions that we believed would be, I don't want to say like gimmies, but kind of quick actions that would, like one of the action items literally just requires Steve to write a memo. So Morgan is task mastering me at writing a memo that I still have not written, but could easily be done in an afternoon. So there's kind of gimme items that are quick, easy, like low hanging fruit. We could just bang them right out. We kind of also went through and looked at items that are probably not as quickly or logistically attainable. There's some items in there that are, I don't want to say kind of really, really high level, would require a lot, probably dedicated staff to really do them. But with that said, I think we've started kind of organizing that information. I think the intent, I mean, I've talked to Greg, but the intent is that Morgan would stay on over the summer. She's vocal-wise interested in that. So she would kind of be a dedicated person to work on this project.
Mark suggested maybe there were already some things the city has accomplished, so it's just a question of logging them.
Right,
And
so
validating them.
so that's kind of what we've been going through, is like, what have we already done, or what do we have that just needs to be logged into the system? And I kind of like what we're seeing Morgan as is kind of like, she'll be the dedicated, 20 to 30 hour a week person to do some of the stuff that we just don't have the staff or, time to do. Like the administrative process is just willing, but there's just not enough hours in the day to do it. So that's kind of where we see Morgan kind of playing into this. Her interest, well, I guess I'll stop talking just about you. So Morgan, you can kind of talk about what you do at SUNY and kind of what your interests are.
Yeah, so I'm a double major. I'm environmental sustainability and sociology, which has a concentration in community and the environment. So that's how I ended up here. So last semester I took community development and change with Gregory Fulkerson, which I think some of you might know. So after taking community development, he offered me an internship here, or connected us, and so that's why I'm here now. I'm also president of the Environmental Science Club on campus, so I help promote a lot of environmental activism with students. I host a lot of different events on campus and off campus, and because this month is the month of Earth Day, we're doing like tree plantings, trash cleanup, so I do like a lot of organizing with the students. And then I'm also on PAX, which is the President's Council on Sustainability. So it's me and then a bunch of professors who talk about sustainability matters and kind of advising the president on what to do in that aspect. So that's my background, essentially.
So we feel that this will be a really good, it'd be kind of a nice real life experience thing. It's something we definitely need because we don't have that dedicated person to just do that. Morgan's also helping us on the LWRP, which is the local waterfront revitalization project that we're doing. And probably we'll start the BOA, I would assume, so she could be involved in the brownfield opportunity. Yeah. And then I think the 2030 project too, the Oleana 2030. I think we're meeting with you tomorrow. And that's another thing that I think Morgan will be able to kind of assist you on, or at least you guys can work together.
And I can assist you.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's kind of where we're at with this, is we now have a person that we can literally attach to this. The only thing I think we discussed was in reorganizing that task force, maybe incorporating the environmental board as part of that. But dual membership, I guess.
Yeah, maybe Kevin Schultz was on before, maybe one of the other members here wants to be a part of that, or two of them, I think. Probably keeping it to 5. I don't know if Mark is still interested in it. Really, I can't recall if it requires any particular number. It might be minimum 3, it might be minimum 5. We can check on that. But if there's anyone interested, we'd be happy to.
There's no minimum number.
No minimum? Okay, thanks.
I know some other people are already working on all of this, but when this first came up, I knew nothing about it, and I tried to look at all of those things that you guys are looking at, and I got completely overwhelmed.
Yeah, it's massive.
Completely. And coincidentally, there was an article in the paper about a program coming up through Cornell Cooperative Extension to become a climate change steward. So I signed up for that program. It's an 8-week program. I've had 2 sessions so far. They're trying to educate us about climate change, but part of it is also climate change cities. So I don't know how much I'm gonna be able to offer, but I'm putting that out there that I'm gonna be learning, I hope, more about this and may have something to offer.
This is wonderful, and thank you, Morgan, for taking this on and through the summer. Past discussions of this, Mark has mentioned a spreadsheet that was somewhere. Were you able to cover what that was, and
Is it-
particularly some of the counting of like the lights and other things that we were trying to take credit for? So if you could give us a little specifics on what do we know
sure.
so far on like what we've done? And I think the
Yeah,
lighting
so I
was
do
one.
have a spreadsheet, a very extensive one that tracks every single action on it, and then I've been tracking either if we've done it yet or if we're going to, and then how to kind of go about doing it. I did email all of the department heads, and I have not gotten any information back from them, so I'm kind of waiting on. So like some of the stuff I have been able to find that we've done without like needing that, like the compost bins that were given to county residents, that's an example of one thing that I can just submit the proof that they were given out and then just submit that.
The ones we purchased.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep, so those have all been distributed. So we've done that. The farmer's market, there's a farmer's market action that we met with Meg Kennedy about. I think that we already have kind of established that we met that action item. So we've kind of worked through it. I mean, some of the stuff is like the fleet stuff, like the vehicle fleets.
That's what I'm interested in too, so I'm interested in working on certain parts and
Yeah.
transportation's a big one.
So that's one that we need kind of the other department heads that have the fleet aspect of the city's, we need to know from them what that looks like. Because
Yeah.
we don't have that. I mean, I know that spreadsheet exists. I just don't have it.
So Greg, remember a few years back, there was that intern, she was local.
Nisha.
Right, exactly. I don't know if you have what she had left, or if I've got that. I thought you had it,
Yeah,
information she had.
she did some, I think the focus was EV
Right,
charging research.
that's right, she did the EV station there,
That
right?
kind of led to the charging station.
Yeah.
That okay, no, deep
Okay.
stuff.
I thought she'd also done a kind of an analysis of where we were. I just wondering if that might help Morgan in terms of tracking down some of the pieces that we already have in place.
That might be what you're looking at, but I
Oh, is
could,
that what,
Well,
No,
this is something.
I
That- that's-
oh,
that's
that's something
it.
new, okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we made it.
okay.
We had a version of that at one point. We can look through it and see if we can find it.
You know, look as well. And then 2 pieces of information, I think you know both these, but we've done a review of the greenhouse gas inventory for the city as well as for the entities, the municipality of the city, as well as this community of the city. And I do have that someplace, but I think it's probably old now. I don't know if it's too. How
Some
it is.
places going to my notes again.
Well, there was the heart rate computer that
Well, I
got
think-
transferred onto a disk, and I have to now search.
I think that's
through
one of those
everything.
actions that if it was in like the last 5 years or something.
Yeah, that might be the
The-
problem. I think it's
yeah.
probably outside that window.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, actually.
Do you know how you went about making that?
We used the Climate Smart Communities
Cool city.
spreadsheet, and we kind of used the data analysis there, and we had a lot of conversations with Dazzle Eklund from, I think she's NYSERDA, to figure out how we were gonna, DC, how we were gonna be able to grab some of that, and we were able to extrapolate some of that data using analysis of kind of different strange kind of data sources. For example, like number of cars that come into the city, we were able to kind of grab that and be able to then use that to quantify things. So there's quite a bit of work in it. And I say we, let me just put it really frankly, the students doing it, I was kind of overseeing
Okay.
and kind of working with them on the project, but they really took the lead on that.
Okay.
And the campus collected quite a bit on things like OPT when we were scoping, and they've updated those significantly. So I don't know what we can borrow from the university.
Yeah, I mean, that'd be great, because that's one of the action items that I was kind of like, it's outside of our ability as far as size. I mean, we don't have the ability to do it, but if you guys already have some sort of methodology or some sort of structure for how you did that, then we would definitely,
They're pretty easy calculators, and again, the students did the first ones on campus too.
Right.
So,
yeah. So I mean, if that's possible, I'd love to hear it, because that's one of those action items that I was like, I don't have time to
Yeah, it's
oversee,
huge.
to do this myself, but if you guys kind of already have that structure.
Well, so, and I'm assuming since you're familiar with the site, but if you're not, there's a, like technical support, technical capacity building through Mohawk Valley Development, something or other, so her contact is on the
Right.
site and
Yep.
probably help with some of that too, free help.
do you also have the assignment to write a memo to the person who comes after you to do the internship? I think Dr. Fulkerson mentioned that to me. So this idea of ongoing technical support from the campus through student
Right.
research is a wonderful thing we might keep going in. And I think
Yeah.
that that's
I
part of
think
the
there is
plan.
something. I do plan on continuing into next year,
Oh,
so that'd be a
fabulous.
little bit down the line. But yeah, I believe it's in there.
'Cause everything takes years, doesn't it?
Well, it's nice, I mean, to have one person
Yeah.
to just, I mean, I think that's the best way, because she can really focus on this project, and we can, instead of having her for a semester and then
Start over.
start over.
Or
and then-
recruiting others and then, having this
Yeah.
continuing support.
Yes.
It's fabulous.
Yeah, thank you, Morgan, this is exciting. Thanks you guys for
Thank you.
helping with this. And so just one other point, kind of Greg, to your kind of question, comment. I think we need to think about how we create this in such a way that it sustains itself, beyond the personalities that are in the room and, things like that. Is there a way, and then also to get it off of your hands as much so that you're supporting, but that it's got a life of its own, and I think we need to give some thought to that, because it's not something we want to add one more burden to your already very busy plates, but we need to think about how we kind of use it. My thinking is that this might be a spot for the environmental board to take more of an active role. Sorry, Chair, but was what I kind of proposed to you all at the last
Sure,
meeting.
of course.
Was that the ownership might live here a little bit more, so it doesn't have to sit on your plate. You can work with them to coordinate. I'm certainly working with Morgan in that capacity, but trying to make sure that we have that life beyond, whatever extra time that you have to be able to focus on it. So, I don't know what that looks like, but I think we need to think about that and how that might look.
That sounds like we get together at some point outside of a regular meeting maybe, and does that make sense?
Maybe.
Is that,
We might just, get a couple of,
Well, that's what I'm saying.
updates and,
Yeah.
see where we're at.
Okay.
Or again, I mean,
Because Caitlin's meeting with them tomorrow, so it's
Right.
happening.
That's
So-
what the-
I don't know whether your old business is still being discussed, but, and I did miss the January meeting when you all discussed this, but my thinking, if you're thinking about restructuring committee structure, that might be a perfect place for this to live more
Sure.
permanently, as a dedicated committee. That would then, hopefully be populated by people for quite a while, if people have an interest in serving that role.
That could serve as the climate smart
Right.
communities task force,
Right, right.
Yeah.
rather than having a separate.
Right.
Separate group,
Task
yeah.
force, right. Right, and then I think there are ways that we can have, we looked into this, people could be associated with the committee, so that they're, you have your committee members that are, people that sit on this board, but then there's people associated with it as well that can assist and help out, kind of as technical advisors, so I think that there's ways to think about that fusion of other folks that might be interested but not have an official title or capacity, you know what I'm saying?
We do have one community member that solicited us that wanted to work on this too.
Okay,
I spoke with her recently, she's still very
Yes.
interested.
Right.
Yeah.
okay.
As is another, so I don't know how big you want this committee to be, but I'm also interested.
I'm very interested in the fact that you're interested.
Oh,
I mean, it's
until
part
we
of the
make
heart-
recommendations and then we'll see how.
No, I mean, I think that's what we actually need, because, I mean, part of this is, I mean, I'm doing as much as I can as a small sliver of my already
Mm.
wide-ranging job. So, I mean,
Yeah.
the more assistance I can get from a group that already has done, I mean, like I said, the greenhouse gas emission thing, I was like, oh, we're not gonna have time to dig into that. That's just too big of a project to, so like the list that we created now is mostly fairly like low-hanging fruit, like stuff that's just boom, boom, boom. We know how many LED lights we have, we know how many, those bigger projects, like that's something that she needs the experience in, and I just don't have the time to commit and really focus on. So I mean, that's where I think this could be great.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And COVID is what we wanted the first time.
Yeah, it was hard to have those meetings with COVID,
Well, and just, you know,
yeah,
we got focus on other things.
like
Rightfully
COVID.
so.
Any other questions from the board? All right, well, thank you very much for your presentation, that's great. Which I guess leaves us with committee reports, and I'm at the top of that list. Again, with the Urban Forest Program, I hope this year to keep focused on the need for updating our tree inventory and the mapping of where eligible locations for plantings still exist in the city to ensure that we have a diverse, healthy canopy as well as, not forget parts of the city that have been overlooked that lack sufficient trees. So that, I guess that's my pet project here. And with your permission, I'm gonna bounce to old business since Mr. Yearly is sitting here with us and Mr. Matthijs. Regarding the draft tree ordinance we had submitted back in December, great opportunity to follow up on that and see what your thinking might be.
Do you want to lead or do you want me to?
Go ahead.
So I reviewed the draft tree ordinance. Some of it I think is really good. It kind of mirrors what we did in the MU1
That was
zone.
deliberate, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so when we redid the zoning code for downtown, we intentionally created a structure for tree planting requirements, tree protections, and you guys kind of mirrored it.
Yeah, we were hoping just to expand that
Right.
citywide.
Yep.
Essentially.
I think it closes a lot. I think that type of ordinance closes a lot of loopholes related to if someone cuts a city tree on public property, well, what happens? Who's responsible for enforcing that? So I think that ordinance cleans a lot of that up. From that end of it, I thought it was fine. I was unsure about the creation of the tree board.
That
I wasn't sure where that was going or how that kind of was integrated into the workflow of.
Sure.
Um,
The existence of a tree board to sort of oversee the ordinance is consistent with basically all the DEC templates for setting up a tree ordinance. Every single one
Okay.
of them established a small board of volunteers that would basically implement the thing and maintain the master plan for the trees. So
Okay.
that's where that's coming from. That's a pretty much standard issue from, I may have just cut and pasted it from their template and modified it for our own
Sure.
purposes.
Okay. Yeah, I know that's yeah, I could see where the model ordinance kind of would have the tree board thing.
Sure.
So I don't know how that would work into the city's kind of administrative
Right.
function, but I think the overall scope I think makes sense. Like I believe that putting the requirement for public trees on private development is reasonable.
Mhm.
It does not add a significant cost. I think as long as the city, DPW or what is Chris's title now?
Public Works Director.
Public Works Director. I kept saying city engineer. I'm like, I know he's not that. I think part of that, the key there is making sure that the city Public Works Director kind of has the reins on it as far as where we're putting these trees and what the species are and I see him being kind of a critical role, which I think in the MU1 code is, you know, at that point it was a city engineer, was kind of the driver of where these trees are going and what species they are, and that's why it intentionally said trees that have been approved by the city engineer. So yeah, so I think that model is good.
Yeah.
I think that having an ordinance like that is good, and I think it cleans up, what do we do if someone chops up a tree that the city owns, or chops down all the trees in their property just to do it? Because we don't have anything right now outside of the downtown that protects
No.
that.
I mean, I left obviously private property off, because that's.
Right.
Seems like a reach too far, obviously, but.
Yeah. But I think that these types of ordinance are good because they essentially supplement the city's funding for public trees,
Sure.
which I think that's the point of that type of ordinance.
Yeah, and I think Tree City USA wanted in its, you know, for its validation of our membership, just to see a clear line of responsibility for the tree program, which I think the ordinance helps with as well.
So that was my take on it, I guess.
And I think moving forward, that, you know, in my mind, that the next step would just be clarifying those areas of responsibility and jurisdiction and who has authority over what. That seems to me like the logical next step. It's a draft.
Was there any thought to this body acting as the tree board? I think it's sort of, I wouldn't say it has acted as a tree board.
Right.
But de facto tree
De
board
facto.
over the years. Is that too far beyond the scope? I mean, you guys are involved in a lot of things, environmental, it covers a lot.
The language that I had drafted was that we have one member from this board on the tree board, so that there is an open line of communication, but I think we talked about keeping it somewhat separate, just for clear lines of responsibility.
Yeah, it's a little, well, we have different types of boards and commissions. There are certain boards and commissions, obviously, that have decision-making responsibility and power,
Right.
authority. This sounds like it would be one of those, potentially, to an extent.
Depends on how
Like when
we
you talk about clear lines of
verbalize it, right?
reporting and whatnot. I think it's something I wanna just discuss more and
Sure.
Yeah.
get back and talk more about.
But I mean, I think the concept and the intention of the ordinance makes sense, because it mirrors something we've already implemented in part of the city.
If I might suggest it, to your point, the representation of different parts of the city is an important part of this potentially, particularly if the recent grant is also for, you know, based on environmental injustices or, you know, whatever the language was in that grant. And it seems like maybe we could reach beyond this board and also get some other community rep, or maybe even, you know, members of the council might have an interest in who's on this board.
As
And we talked about the
drafted it,
NAACP in the past too, as someone to reach out to.
Right,
that
right, okay,
organization.
sure. I think in the draft, the tree board has a member from this board as well as a member of the common council on the tree board, so I think that might be in there.
I would think some boards might have more interest than others in the initiative or,
Yeah.
and then whether or not the, you know, the business community, the private developer, you know, is that stakeholder also gonna have some input? So the chamber or somebody like that, I mean,
Mhm.
conceivably, they have a lot of interest in both downtown in particular, but, so that's a thought. Just have broader perspectives and representation.
Okay, community engagement.
Well, aside from engaging with two community members who are interested in helping with climate smart community efforts or other Christine. I know Mike was gonna help with that as well, but he's not yet accepted the administrator privileges. That's all we got.
I missed I'm blanking here, I'm trying to write my notes. Community volunteers interested, what was the committee?
Well, just not in a formal capacity, but I did meet with another participant in the program and the person who's interested in writing the climate action plan potentially, who re-expressed their interest in being involved in some way, so it's kind of incumbent on us to figure out how to engage them.
Climate action plan were the 3 words I was looking for, thank you. Great, wonderful.
If I could,
Sure.
I just wanted to note, thank you both. I noticed that the Facebook site was really active, a lot of great content, and it was pretty clear, so well done. I was really kind of excited to see that much more kind of content kicked out, and it was all really great, high quality stuff.
Thanks. Only one error. Accidentally posted like a cooking thing. But I removed it quickly.
I think the tricky part is,
Oil and cheese.
Was it organic?
well,
It was very dear.
especially if you're using your phone, it can be tricky because
Yes.
sometimes the phone wants to default to a page that you're posting as. You just have to be really careful or not post on your phone.
The recipe?
It was a great recipe.
Bonus content.
Great.
But you can always send us stuff too if you're not, if you.
Please send us.
Energy. What's the deal?
Well, we continue to be interested in what happens with geothermal loop. And I don't think that we've got an update on that. But
We are in the still trying to reach out to the property owners in the area of study and try to get some information, what units, what type of heat do they have? Do they have AC? And what is their, load, and that sort of information that on some of these buildings we don't have. It's tough to get people to respond. So we've sent a mass email, Stephen compiled,
Morgan
compiled a list of contact info we have in their office.
I don't want to take credit for that.
so we need door
So-
knockers?
We tried that. Well, I don't know how many doors they knocked on, but OCCA was helping us out. They did I think they focused on Main Street. I don't know if they went to every building, all the 300 something buildings in the study area, but they tried that and still didn't have a whole lot of success. But I think depending on what we get back in this week from emails, I might just start making calls to people on the list that I know and hounding them. Try to get as much as we can. Obviously, Ramble, our consultant, can make assumptions, but the better data we have, the better product we'll have.
And a couple others, since we're, have you in the room, to take the opportunity. As we've kind of talked about a little bit before, the state's initiatives on zero emission, on electric vehicle infrastructure, includes having every 50 miles on the interstate a place for public to charge, and it's also linked to economic development opportunities, including because they gotta have a place to eat, etc. And so how can we possibly benefit from that, be one of those every 50 mile spots? And can the city benefit from it, or is it gonna be on South Side? And if the city wants to think about it, maybe a place like where Stella Luna is, we already have energy infrastructure. We might think about not just for people coming down the freeway, but for our own community, where charging stations might be that are accessible, and also could be this anchor again for redevelopment of something that is sitting there delinquent and is a wonderful space that could be help tie with these other economic development issues maybe down there on that street. And just the broader, how are we gonna try to meet the kind of goals in New York State, or if not meet, go down that same road for our own climate action plan at some point too, but starting after we get a baseline, setting goals and transportation, both the city's greening fleet, but how do we get the public starting to change? And we can be leaders in that. But we can also provide the infrastructure and maybe take advantage of the federal money, the state money, et cetera. And that's why, part of why your project is so important too, if we can get grants to be part of that EV infrastructure, which Governor Hochul has renewed. You know, that's one of their big priorities, energy, transportation, and the built environment. So the built environment, also something we've talked about, how do we get clean energy in new developments, and maybe even as a requirement or a way in which we incentivize clean energy in new developments, housing developments, whatever it might be.
Yeah, I mean, certainly the district energy is, I think, the biggest opportunity to make the biggest impact if that works out and that's feasible. It's a huge undertaking. I don't know who would own and operate that. Is that an ISAC thing? Is that State of Oneonta? New utility, new service?
Is
All
it county, is
things
it
to be
regional?
studied.
Yeah.
You know, as far as EV infrastructure, we did apply for another DEC. It's the Zero Emission Vehicle Infrastructure Grant. So we applied for, I think it was $300,000 for level 2 charging stations in the new parking garage that we're working on designing now. So I haven't heard, I checked that about weekly, it hasn't been announced yet. I'm fairly confident we'll get something from that. So that would be like level 2 charging, you know, the difference between level 2 and level 1
DC
fast
fast
charging. That I
Yep.
think is what they're looking for, the
Yep.
every 50-mile thing. I'm not sure that downtown is the place for that. I don't know, but that's a 10, 15-minute charge and you're out, you know, similar to a gas station now, but a little bit longer. So, you know, the level 2 is where you plug in, you go to lunch and you come back, or you know, spend time shopping or whatever. Maybe that's more appropriate for city
Even
center.
half an hour coffee and a donut or pastry, those are small businesses we
Yeah.
benefit from.
Yeah, it's also obviously much greater power requirements. So as of right now, for the parking garage, we're looking at level 2. That's not a place that we're looking at level 1. That's not to say that there's not another place in the city that can be looked at. To answer your question, I don't know. I haven't researched the every 50 miles. You know,
That's part of the state
reached
plan,
out as part of
so it's
that.
out there, yep.
So,
Isn't level 1 just household current?
I'm sorry, level 3. I
Yeah,
say 1
okay.
and 3. Yeah, yeah, level 1 is just regular. Just to, you know, on transportation in general, I think the bigger impact long-term, this isn't just for Oneonta, but for anywhere, is reducing
A
vehicle miles
reduction
traveled.
of vehicle mileage.
And we're
Reduction
going
of
in the other direction.
number of vehicles. Yeah, electrifying, going EV is something, but that's not gonna solve the larger problem. I think what the biggest impact, when we look at our downtown redevelopment and trying to do, what we're trying to do is
Walking.
fill in empty spaces with housing, have more people living downtown. Yeah, you want people coming downtown to visit from other places in Oneonta, outside the region, whatever, but having people live there, I can say from personal experience, when you live downtown, you walk by the coffee shop every day, you go there more often. You're a regular customer, it gives you a more stable base of activity, of things going on, and not to mention people actually buying things. Just walking down Main Street, having more people there makes a difference in the perception of it. And then you combine that with transit hub projects, you start to build an actual little city, not just a little village that's called the city, and you start acting like one, and you have that urban sort of transit option. And the more frequent that service is, the more convenient it is, then the more likely someone is to take that option rather than owning a car. It's right now that for most people, it's just much more convenient, and it's too inconvenient to try to take the bus. So I think we can build our own little mini city in downtown Oneonta, and that probably will have more of an impact than the same people who might be driving cars now and switching to EV. You know, if we can get them to stop driving as much and have a few more people take advantage of our transit system.
But which is more likely, we might consider decarbonization is state policy, it really is what makes sense. And I would love to get more people out of cars. But part of the transition might be micromobility, machines that are electrified, scooters, skateboards, all these things that people are already using. And so how we serve them as well. Because, you know, getting people to take the bus is only one strategy.
Oh, yeah. And I'm not certainly arguing against.
Yeah, I think we need like all of the above, or at least to have these conversations would be wonderful. And I know there's so many players in the transportation. It's OPT, it's the school buses, there's so many different areas we gotta work on, frankly. And there's state money, there's state initiative to do this. And at some point, it's gonna be not just here's some money, it's gonna be, you're gonna do this, you know, at some point. So, you know, 15 years out, we're gonna have made a transition. So,
I mean, I think that all of our planning processes right now are geared towards meeting those types of goals. I mean, when we reworked the zoning code for the downtown, we incentivized LEED certification for new construction. We require in our downtown ordinance for zoning, well, it's not so much a zoning code as it's a development code, and that code requires the installation of electric charging ports for vehicles. It requires tree planting. It requires a reduction of impervious coverage. Like, it's focused on all of those things because modern planning is focused on doing that. So when we in the planning community think about how places are being designed, we're not looking at places that are strip malls with a gas station and a McDonald's that's just not how modern community planning is working. So I think that the vision that we've got within the city and within our planning functions is all of those things, incorporating walkability, like the number of people in Oneonta, and I'm not trying to like poop in the punch bowl here, but that are driving a quarter of a mile just to drive a quarter of a mile and then turn around and drive a quarter mile back. I mean, those are the kind of things we don't want to see and we don't want to incentivize. So like, we have a community that is largely walkable, and making a better place to walk around in and a better place to utilize, that's kind of where we're trying to go. So yeah, so I think you're right. It's all of the above. It's figuring out micromobility. It's figuring out electric charging, but it's also just figuring out how to convince people that, hey, it's a nice day out. Maybe just walk that 1,320 feet. So.
well, Mayor Bloomberg had some solutions that included putting concrete things in streets to prevent too much easy flow. And this is also possibly a way to protect some neighborhoods that are under a lot of pressure from traffic and speeding. So,
Yeah.
Anyway, we'll talk, you know, Transportation Committee can grow.
Well, that's next, right?
Well, I think we talked about it.
Okay, you're.
I'm
covered
gonna
both.
spare everyone any more on that.
Just a smooth segue. We're
Who
done.
else is interested in transpo?
We can talk.
Okay.
Thank you. Public spaces.
Okay.
That's you.
I've had a couple of meetings, but this is about trying to name some creeks. I have almost like regular meetings now with Michelle Temming and Janice LaBrue, two teachers. And so we're just in like regular conversation. We just haven't like taken the kids out there yet. The latest communication to them was, when you're ready, I'm here. And I can be the person who does who talks with the kids out at the creeks and who does like the science communications and helps them with the science content. So my latest with them was, when you're ready, just let me know and I can jump on and help out. Had 3 or 4 meetings in the past 5 weeks with them. I've had several conversations with them. No crease of names, but I'm constantly on the radar, and just sort of waiting for them to say, hey, we're ready.
Yeah.
So,
Very good. Michael emailed his report to me today, so I will quickly review that. Susquehanna Greenway Committee is planning 2 trail work days. Previously, the EB talked about co-sponsoring this sort of thing. So he recommends the board should vote whether we want to do this jointly with the Greenway or not. Sandy can tell us the details. Do you have details?
I'm on that.
Okay.
They didn't come prepared. I haven't looked at my minutes from last month much, but I think May 6th is one day. That's an Into the Streets Day, and a team, I think the swim team from SUNY Oneonta will be helping out. And I'm not involved in that because I've got something else going on that day. I lead bird walks, so I've got that commitment. So I don't know if that fits in with your public spaces thing, getting people out to enjoy our public spaces. The other date was to be determined with this board. When, you know, how much do you wanna get involved, what do you wanna do? Some of the things we have that need doing. This time of year, there's not, there's not much in the way of trail maintenance. But there are places on the side of the Sterling Greenway that are a little bit wet. There's a nice big pile of wood chips out there, so we're planning on going out and moving some of those chips to some of the wet areas. There's a boardwalk that needs to be repaired, but I think that's a two-person job, and my husband and I are gonna try to handle that. As we get into May, mid-May, there's a lot of trail work that can be done. Chopping, not weed. Does anybody want a great stress reducer? Go out, I used to do this, well, I still do it, but I don't need to reduce stress anymore because I'm retired. Machete with the Japanese knotweed and great stress reducer. So there's a lot of different ideas. Oh, and we need to scrape down and re-stain some of the benches out on
Come in
Science
my
Lane.
backyard. It's all knotweed.
Did I cover it okay?
I think so. Last thing he noted was the Greenway Committee has applied for a grant for an informational sign and park bench near the dam on New Island, and he hopes the environmental board at some point might think about ways we could help make New Island more accessible, since it's not officially a park, and the park commission does not get involved with it. So that is what Mike left for me.
Someone mentioned, I was not at one of the meetings, but someone mentioned that there was an idea to put parking off Lennis Highway to New Island, for New Island. Because right now, the only access is to go, the only legal access is to park at Catella Park and go out under the I-88 entrance, you know, underneath I-88, and then, so that's the only legal way. Do you know, anybody know anything about that idea? I didn't know if it was an idea somebody threw out or if it came from the city. Guess not, huh?
I don't know, it's part of the Eldover.
That'd be the
Eldover
town.
Key, did they talk
What is it again? What do you?
for New Island access?
Access to New Island, you're talking about access to New Island?
To New
I
I
Island,
thought it was
yeah.
right there for 88.
I think it's been discussed in the LWRP,
There-
but it's still.
there
Right.
is, but that's not really legal to have an entrance, from what I understand, it's not legal to have an entrance, like, yeah, off
The
the,
DOT would approve anything
Exactly.
there, right? That's a
On the line
pretty
like that.
dangerous spot
yeah,
already.
It's already a dangerous spot.
Yeah.
yeah. The only other thing that came up is all the work that's being done in Niwa Park. And I don't know if the environmental board knows anything about this, I mean, it goes along the mill race. All that vegetation and trees have been taken down. Is there a plan to replace that? Apparently the DOT is doing it, if my information is correct. So, we know nothing.
There's been a lot of clearing down there, a lot.
Yeah.
By the pickleball courts, that area there?
Yeah.
I believe
Yeah.
DPW did that. And
DPW,
I'll have to
okay.
talk with them, see what, I mean,
Okay.
they have a plan to improve it further than that, I believe, but exactly what, I have to
It
check.
seems like there's some hillsides where they've taken everything off that could cause some sliding.
Yeah, well, the dam face is required, maybe that's where DOT came in. They don't do that, we maintain it, but that levee is a DOT built known structure that we have to maintain. They require that to be clear of vegetation down to, I don't know how many inches. So you're able to inspect it regularly for each input. So that hillside you're talking about, that's part of the levee system. It had been quite overgrown for some time.
Can I ask a quick question? Do we have any algal bloom problems in the city?
Not that I'm aware of.
The county is working on this, and I'm just wondering if there was anything in the city. We haven't-
Not that I'm aware of.
All
keep Mohawk Valley beautiful.
Yes. So I researched into what this is all about and talked to several people involved with it. Briefly, Keep Mohawk Valley Beautiful is an affiliate of the National Keep America Beautiful, and the goals are to create sustainable communities that are socially connected, environmentally healthy, and economically sound. And they are focusing on litter because they say that their environmental and economic costs to litter that negatively impact local wildlife, public drainage systems, road safety, and property values. I know that when we talked about it, there was some concern about, as opposed to just picking up litter, to doing things to prevent the litter. And they actually have 4 points to what they want to end littering, but they also do stuff to reduce, reuse, recycle. They have what they call restoration resiliency, which includes restoring decimated urban forests. So I think our trees come into that. And they want to beautify communities in order to cultivate and nurture livable communities, and they talked about community gardens. So there's more to this program than just picking up litter, but the thing that they're going to be doing next week, which is on April 19th at 11 o'clock here on City Hall steps, is promoting this nationwide effort to clean up visible litter. That's the focus of that, but it's not the only thing they do. So I will represent us there. I don't really expect that I'll have much time to say anything from what I remember last year. There are other people who talk at more length about these other aspects, but is there anything in particular that the board would like me to say to represent us? Other than, hey, we have a good idea, we support you. Anything?
Can we thank Judy and the city for the successful ash tree grant, was it?
Can do that.
Yeah,
Is that
that's-
what- Okay,
well, within your purview, I think.
Unless the city's also speaking on it.
I'm sorry.
Unless the city's already speaking about it, but it's nice to acknowledge good work.
Do you know anything about this, Greg? Who's gonna be talking and?
I'm not aware of anyone speaking from the city staff. I'm just aware of the event.
What I remember last year, it was people from the Keep Mohawk Valley program. I think they had, I can't remember the name of the fellow who does the recycling program here in town.
It's April 19th at 11 a.m. Thank you,
Shane
President.
Duggan, I think
Yeah,
Shane Duggan.
weather permitting.
Oh,
But he's from the county.
Oh, county, yeah, sorry. So what was his, I can't remember.
Shane Dygan, but he's no longer works with the county, so I'm not
Okay,
sure. if that's
whoever
what it
runs
was.
the recycling business, I guess, and transfer station, all that, talked about
Yeah,
recycling.
Shane Duggan.
But,
I think
I
it'll be
know
charter
Kevin
probably.
spoke, and I don't remember he had a lot to say other than just support it, but, right.
Thank you very much, Kathy,
I can
for
certainly,
represent us.
I
It's
can
much
talk. I
appreciated.
may not understand climate change studies, but I can talk.
Calls, any new business? Okay, thank you all for coming, especially our guests, much appreciated.
Was fun.
And,